tough call, but maybe not.
There's nothing passive about a rental property.
The only bad question is, hey, Mike, I went and did this. What do you think of what I did? Here we go.
I'm heading into retirement soon, and I've always been planning on selling my home so I don't have a mortgage payment to worry about in retirement.
But now I'm rethinking that choice. I don't own it outright, but I do have a very low interest rate compared to today's rates.
What should I do?
If you're happy in your home, keep it. There's nothing wrong with having a mortgage in retirement.
This is an extremely important question because once you sell your home, that is an irrevocable decision, as you know. The mindset of not carrying a mortgage in retirement, this has been passed down to us generations, many generations of people say you have to pay off your home, right? And I get it. Psychologically, you can feel like there's a large burden that's removed from your shoulders by paying off your home.
You absolutely should rethink that choice. A mortgage is a lien on an appreciating asset. It's not debt that's bad like a credit card. Your home value will still appreciate in value regardless of whether there's a mortgage on it. If you have a very low interest rate, your high yield cash savings can probably even earn more than you're paying in that interest rate. So don't overpay your mortgage. It doesn't have to be paid off. It is okay to still have a mortgage in retirement. We do want to factor that in and separate those expenses out in a retirement plan and know that the PI portion, it does not go up with inflation. It is locked in for a long time. If you did a 30-year mortgage, it's locked in for 30 years. And we do know that that's not going to go up and it will fall off at some point, maybe 10 years into retirement, maybe 15 years into retirement. And you'll always have the taxes and insurance. So you got to separate out your expenses in retirement and know that it's going to be there. But the fact that it doesn't go up with inflation makes it a lot easier to pay over time too. It is completely fine to have a mortgage in retirement.
And what I love about the mortgage, if you think about it, it's like there's 4 components: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. People think when their house is paid off, they don't have a mortgage payment. You still have a mortgage payment, tax and insurance. Your house always has a bill. The principal and interest is a fixed cost that doesn't grow with inflation. So even in retirement, it's a small piece of your expenses that isn't growing that will go away at some point, but you're still going to be on the hook for tax and insurance, right? So unless it's the dream home and you're willing to get that more expensive, higher interest rate mortgage, keep the house. Don't worry about the mortgage dragging into retirement. It'll be paid off eventually.
In a circumstance where you have a very low interest rate and you're thinking about getting rid of your mortgage when you relocate, that tells me you're thinking of one of 2 things. You're either going to rent a place so you don't have to worry about a mortgage, or potentially you are going to buy a place that's more affordable and pay it off. If you're planning on renting in retirement, let me be clear, I think renting makes sense in many situations for people, but when you're retired, you have to realize rent increases can potentially be steep. And to be retired and potentially face every 12 months a large increase on your lease, that could be catastrophic, right? That can really burden your financial picture, right? You don't want to find yourself in a position where you're constantly moving around in retirement for rent increases. Let's say that you're going to retire and you feel the need to sell your current home because you carry a mortgage and you want to take the proceeds and simply pay off a home. Don't rush to do that, right? I have a situation with a client approaching retirement. His wife passed away and he felt a sense of urgency. I can't afford the home. I'm going to relocate. I'm moving an hour west. And we just had to pause, right? You don't want to make a huge financial decision, certainly in an emotional, stressful situation like that. Let's take a step back. Let's look at the numbers. And I showed him, based on where his expenses were, just by himself on his current income and what that looks like relative to his current mortgage, he can actually afford to stay. And we could make the case he might be able to potentially stay for 20 or 30 years if he wants to. And so I think that was a huge relief of stress for him. He did not sell the home. He knows to talk to me. I've told him 1,000 times, there are no bad questions Of course, but the only bad question is, hey, Mike, I went and did this. What do you think of what I did? Right? I don't want him to say, oh, by the way, I sold my home. What do you think about that? Right? So talk to a planner, talk to a professional before you go make a decision, especially an irrevocable decision. But I was able to show him he could stay in the home, and that was a huge relief for him.
I liken retirement to your first day at work, right? Your first day at work, you know where the copier is, you know where the bathroom is, you don't know where anything is. It's all a learning curve. So you don't make big changes in that learning curve. So don't feel apt to have to downsize right away. Slowly do it. See if you can live in this house even though it may be bigger than you need. Find your way first, then make big decisions. Because effectively, part of the job of being your advisor is we're going to bake in the conversation going, if this isn't your forever home, where would it be? If it's not Arizona, if it's not Boston, what's that look like? Let's plan it in to go, is that day one of retirement or is that year 3? We can have that conversation that if it's a decision that's going to ultimately hurt your sustainability, I'm duty bound to go, this is a horrible idea, don't do it.
With people's homes, they tend to be emotional in their spending. It's where they live, it's where they spend all of their time. So maybe they come and say they want to do a massive kitchen remodel. I try to bring the reality back into the equation, where if they can't afford it, I will tell them straight up they can't afford it. I mean, that's where you have to, that's my job, is to take the emotion out of it.
The ones I see successfully retired, they jump in other projects. They volunteer, they do grandparents, they do more activities. So they have a thing day one that gives them purpose to fill that old 9-to-5 void that they now have to fill. And that's part of our conversation, going, what gives you passion? If you didn't have to work, what would you do? I have some clients, they're paying for cooking classes, they're doing woodworking, they're finding new reasons to get back some of the time, and really asking them those hobby questions on the front end, not just money spend. What brings you joy? What are you going to do? I mean, that's part of the plan on, and I say it quite frankly, in my experience, if your plan is sitting in a rocking chair waiting to die, you're going to have a miserable retirement. Let's think early what you like doing, and let's make a plan for those hobbies.
I have a client that was wanting to spend $100,000 on a kitchen remodel, and when I looked at the financial plan, it would not work. There was just no way I could make it work unless they were going to work 4 years longer. And so it was having that frank, hard conversation: is this kitchen remodel, if those new countertops, is it worth working longer? Because if you use it, then I'm not confident that you will have it to buy food and pay the bills in retirement. So that's where people can get really emotional about their homes and really want to spend a lot of money making it beautiful and pretty, because that's where everybody comes and sees it. But that's where there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, and I have to bring people back down to reality.
I've been saving my year-end bonuses for the last few years.
And I'm looking to make a strategic investment with that money.
Does it make more sense to buy a second real estate property to rent out,
Or put the money in the stock market?
A lot of us do this, where they say, this paycheck money is for X, and this bonus money is for Y, and this inheritance money is for Z. A better way of doing this so that it can help you determine whether real estate is right for you or whether the stock market is right for you is to say, what goals do I want to accomplish, and how does all the money that I have help me accomplish that goal? Because then the question is easy. If a real estate property is part of your overall diversified portfolio, then you should be saving for a down payment. Then you'll know exactly how much you need for a down payment. So whether you have 6 figures or 5 figures, you would know whether or not you have enough for the down payment for that real estate property. If the goal is to, retire, for example, then the stock market may be the better idea. But bucketing our monies usually puts us in these situations where we just have a discombobulated financial plan rather than one cohesive financial plan with all the goals that we have, and this bucket of money driving how we accomplish that goal.
In Arizona, I get this question a lot, and I try and warn people, if you've never owned a rental property, there's a steep learning curve of the terrible T's: toilets, tenants, trouble. And so there's this thing that people go, I want passive income. There's nothing passive about a rental property, right? So if you've not done it before, you need to make sure you get help. And that's gonna be a property manager. That's gonna find a realtor that's gonna help you buy a good rentable property. Where I have seen some people have success is they rent out the house they used to live in because they know all the sounds, they know all the ins and outs. That's an easier way to own real estate, but then that means probably buying another house. So that's the easy way to do it.
There's something super appealing to people about having something tangible. So they think about real estate as something you can't actually hold it, of course, but it's something that is actually physical. They own something that they can touch. Versus a stock market investment that feels a little bit more intangible. It feels, like it's just on paper. So real estate is really appealing for people, but I will tell you from my own personal experience and what I see from clients is that unless it's your business, so unless you're investing in multiple real estate properties, or unless you're retired and this is gonna be your retirement job or hobby, it's really a lot of work.
You definitely can't put everything in rental real estate. I would make sure that you have stock market investments that are liquid that you have access to for retirement. So it depends on the plan. It depends on what your expenses are. It depends on when you want to retire. It depends on so many things that I don't think I have in this question. Can you even buy a rental for $100,000 unless you're buying in, I don't know where, Mississippi maybe? But you have to consider if you want to take that risk or not, because we have to account for rentals not always being rented out. There are vacancy periods. And if you have a mortgage on it, it is going to be at a higher interest rate than your primary residence.
So I'm just going to say this. I think real estate investments should be left to real estate professionals. It is one thing to have your first home and then you move into a bigger home and you're like, you know what, it's in a nice neighborhood, I'm going to rent it. It's another to have this persona that is based on the fixer-upper shows and say, I'm all of a sudden going to be a flipper. In most cases, this is just like that uncle who made it big in that one stock. They're not telling you how many times they failed or the actual effort it took to make maybe $10,000. Right? There is a lot involved in buying a property and renting it. I have seen, unfortunately, a lot of clients who will see a good property, that's a fixer-upper, they buy it, they renovate it just to find out the neighborhood covenant doesn't allow renters. Now what? Right? If you are not a real estate professional, if you don't have a real estate professional on your side, I don't think you should be in the business of buying up rental properties and renting them out. You are exposing yourself not only to the losses that you may incur because you haven't done enough research, but also to contractors that you may have not vetted well or seen their work. But also to legal peril, because now you own a property, you're renting it to somebody and you don't know where your liability extends. So once again, I think it is perfectly fair to say having some sort of different sources of income is good in retirement. But I would say that in a majority of time, the boring way of investing in your 401k, maybe having a brokerage account, just makes it so much easier for you to have a distribution strategy that is sustainable without you having to add all of these complications into things.
Tell me the property you're thinking about, right? Going to cost $300,000. Okay. How are you going to pay for the $300,000? Well, it's going to take money out of my IRA. Okay, well, that's taxable, right? I have this bonus. All right, is that RSUs? Is that stock? What's the net effect? Right. Then we just play the game. If you now have a mortgage or not mortgage on this rental property, what do you think you can rent it for? I think you can rent it for $2,000. Well, the property manager is going to charge you 10%. Now you're making $1,800. Every once in a while, you're going to have to do roof, AC. There's going to be lots of things. So it just keeps eating away at this perceived, I'm gonna make easy money. It just keeps chipping away. And so showing them the number, they go, this is what you're looking at. If you're comfortable with this, then go do it. Go try it on. Because the beauty is you still potentially have an appreciating asset. So if after a while you hate being a landlord, you then could sell the property. If it's grown, you're gonna owe capital gains. There's options.
I had a client recently who told me a story about a tenant. They had a rental unit in a condo. They did have a mortgage on it. The rent was paying for the mortgage, so it seemed like, it was a good deal, except that this particular tenant had multiple dogs in the property when she wasn't allowed. She left all of the windows open in the property and was running the air conditioning like through the summer. So it blew up the air conditioning unit. And it was one of those, it's on top of like an apartment building. So it was really expensive to have replaced. I want to say it was like $10,000 to have it replaced, and had to get floors replaced from the dogs, had to have walls replaced because the dogs had scratched holes in the walls. And security deposit doesn't cover that. So it was an enormous amount of expense just to maintain this property. So all the money that she had made on the extra rental income over the mortgage was eaten up by all of the expenses that she had to pay for in this particular piece of property. That doesn't happen all the time, but because you're now relying on other people to maintain your property, or maybe you're paying a property management company, all of those expenses related to maintaining the property or paying someone else to maintain it are eating into that income stream. So real estate as an investment is a lot harder to deal with, even though, again, you have that tangible piece, than just the easy peasy, put it in a diversified investment in stocks and bonds and real estate and overseas, et cetera, where you can get access to it. It's not tied up in a property. You can get your money back out in a year if you want. Granted, it could be worth less, but so could the piece of property. So one that is maybe a little bit more fun and exciting and gives you something tangible, and the other that's easy, long-term, has a better rate of return, and is much more liquid and accessible to you. I don't know. I would say tough call, but maybe not.
Having a short-term rental is a full-time job. It is managing like an Airbnb, is like managing a little hotel. You have to give access to these people. You have to have a cleaning crew come and clean that you have to pay. And again, you are facing the liability of having people rotate through this property. And a lot of big cities are doing these limitations. So the biggest risk that I see right now in those short-term rentals is you buying one is doing very well, and then the city changes the zoning. Now you have a hard property that you have to maybe figure out what else are you going to do. Is it going to do as well if it was just a month-to-month rental than it would be if it's an Airbnb?
We have to look at what kind of income are you actually getting from that property. There's a cap rate, I think is what it's called, where you look at how much you're actually getting from the rental. And if it's low, if it's 2-3-ish%, you probably could be better off with that money invested in a moderate risk portfolio. You don't even have to put it in all stocks to beat that. But if you're getting 8%, if you're getting a decent return on your money, if you invest that $100,000 and you're getting $8,000 a year, that's 8%. That's pretty good income from it. And it's consistent. And as long as you have the money to account for if there's vacancies and repairs, then yeah, it's consistent income. It's pretty good to diversify your holdings and have real estate as well as stocks. I love a financial plan that has both.
What happens is it feels like you've got skin in the game. You're putting in the work and you're reaping the rewards. You're out there, you're painting the house, you're finding the tenants, you're doing all the work. It feels like you're getting what you put into it. But the reality is that sometimes simple is better. So even though an investment into the market might just seem, well, it's, that's kind of boring comparatively, you know what, your time is worth money too. So the amount of time that you're spending putting into maintaining the property or trying to rent it out or putting it on, Airbnb or whatever it is, that's all time that's worth money to you also. And sometimes it's slow and steady that wins the race. And so having that kind of passive investment that you're not having to do much with, but it's sitting there, it's available, it may not be as tangible, but it's real money. And ultimately you've got to really weigh, what is it that really is most important to you about this pot of money? Is it doing something where it's going to be sort of your hobby, or something where you're actually just going to set it, forget it?